Hi, I'm Christina Barentine. I am the author of Lost Alliances, and I know I haven't made a video in forever, but that is so not the point. So this particular video, I would finally like to give you a little bit of some of the background information on some of the people that I promised to give you a video on and neglected to do so for like 2 months, which was evil of me. Anyway, so this particular video is going to be devoted to our favorite phoenix, Aidion of Redmond, and I hope I'm saying his name finally because it's only been like 5 years, give or take, and it's about time I learned how to say his name right. In my defense, I did not invent the name. I am horrible at naming things, and that is completely irrelevant. So, if you've ever gotten your hands on any of my manuscripts or whatever you want to call them, you would realize that Aidion does not appreciate being called the son of Redmond, and perhaps you would be a little curious, and rightfully so. You're supposed to be curious, that's the point. However, telling you the details of why he does not like being called son of Redmond is not a horrifying spoiler, so I'm willing to tell you. All of that being said, why should you not call him the son of Redmond? There are two very fantastic reasons, one of which is ancient and historic, and the other one is much more personal. So the Phoenixes, unlike some lore, there's not just one of them, there's an entire race of them, and a very long time ago, when the world was first created, each of the races was tasked with a specific purpose, a goal, if you will. Something that they were supposed to be a guardian of, and these races were also given this particular elemental magic that they were supposed to be like keepers of. Like the phoenixes, for instance, were given fire to the elves, were given water, dwarves were given power of the earth, and dragons the sky. Now, each of those races was also given a particular domain that they were sort of the keepers, the guardians of. Elves were given the forest and the sea because their magic is so great that they just get, great power, great responsibility, quote Spider-Man. Yeah, they just get more. The dragons were given the sky, mountain peaks, any place that was too high for the other races to bother with. And people learned to respect them because they're dragons, they breathe fire, drar. The dwarves were given every place under the mountain because, they're really good at mining stuff and they like it. So give them the underground places, the mountains and all that, and they're happy. And the phoenixes were not given a particular realm, so to speak, but they were placed as guardians over the other races, most especially the humans, who had no domain to rule over except their own. And so the phoenixes, because their power was the greatest and because they had power over life and death itself, they were the ones who were supposed to protect the humans from the other races, from each other, whatever. They were just supposed to help keep track of them. And, for a time, peace prevailed, and things were good. But, of course, as anybody who has ever lived anywhere other than under a rock knows, peace doesn't exactly prevail for longer than about 5 seconds. So, even in a preschool class, especially not in a world where there's people and magic and monsters. So, of course, the peace did not last. And there came a time when the king of the phoenixes was a man named Redmond, and he was powerful and he was good and wise, and he had many sons, and his sons were the rulers of the army. They kept track of the forces, they took care of the training, all that army stuff. But his sons, especially the eldest, believed that it was not that taking care of the humans was sort of beneath them, that the humans were weak and quarrelsome and stupid and sucked with magic, and the phoenixes did not believe that it was their rightful duty to take care of them. So the sons of Redmond gathered up some not very happy armies, and they marched through the human lands, and they burned villages as they went. And the king, Redmond, was paralyzed by fear and by shame and by his inability to go against his own sons. I mean, how could he stop them? They were his kin, they were his blood. And so for a time, nothing happened. The sons of Redmond were allowed to destroy and burn and wreak havoc. But then the highest ranking general left in the Phoenix's armies, a man named Ragnar, he gathered up what was left of their forces and he marched against the Sons of Redmond. And they ended the first and only civil war of the Phoenixes. And it was a bad time for the Phoenixes. It was a very shameful moment, and it was a dark moment in their history. And after that, they sort of became afraid to fight. But the Sons of Redmond, for their crimes, were stripped of their name, their title, and the king, Redmond, was stripped of his title. He was no longer king. It was no longer his right because he failed his people when they needed him the most. He did nothing. He sat back and did nothing. And so they stripped him and his family of their honor, their everything. And they were made to be like servants. But Ragnar, the king, Ragnar the general, was made the king. And he and his sons ruled to present day, except that present day Phoenixes don't exactly exist. So you fast forward a few generations, which in Phoenix time is like several thousand years. I haven't exactly nailed down the timeline perfectly, but that's not the point. You fast forward to the time when Aidion's father was born. His mother, whether she wanted to try to bring honor back to the family, or she was just crazy or stupid or ignorant of her own history, decided to name her son Redmond after her ancestor, the last king in their family. And he showed promise. He was good with the sword. Not that that was particularly honorable in their society because of the Civil War. Most of the Phoenixes felt that anybody who carried a sword should die by one because it was just so dishonorable to do it. And perhaps that was a great fault of theirs, but not the point. So Redmond grew up. He became betrothed to a beautiful young Phoenix woman whose proper pronunciation of her name escapes me, but I think it's like Alias. I can't remember. It's Scottish and I'm not. Anyway, I'm pretty sure it's Alias. Anyway, so he was engaged to her, but he ventured into the elven realms and he met a young elf, and she was beautiful, and he fell in love with her, and he married her in secret. And they had a child. She, the elf, died in childbirth. And the child, the elves and the Phoenixes, to say they didn't get along is like saying Hitler didn't like Jews. Okay, they hated each other. If the elves knew how to kill the Phoenixes, they would have started a war to try to genocide them, which is not proper. I don't even think that's a verb. Anyway, not the point. They would have done it a long, long time ago if they knew how to do it. But they didn't. Both the Phoenixes and the elves had standing law. I mean, it wasn't like an official law, but it was like an accepted rule, you know, an unwritten code that you just don't have a child between an elf and a phoenix. You don't. And if you do, that child is not permitted to live. It's an abomination. It's blasphemy. I mean, not that they're especially religious, but you get the point. They called the child Redmond's Bane, and she was sentenced to death from the moment she was born. Perhaps even before then. But perhaps showing his first ounce of courage and backbone, Redmond refused to kill his child. He sent her away. And she will become relevant later, but not right now, and I'm not telling you anymore because I hate spoilers. Redmond went back home, shamed, his name completely ruined. I mean, if you could ruin a son of Redmond's name, Redmond managed to do it epically. I mean, they were already shamed because of the Civil War, because of the destruction of their people. He did an amazing job of throwing their name into the mud and stomping on it repeatedly, and just bad man. And he married Alias, and they had 2 children, Aidion and Ailia. And she died giving birth to her daughter. And Redmond, he could not handle the added grief of losing both of his wives, of being shameful, and so he succumbed to alcohol and shameful living. I mean, he was not a good father. He essentially, his children were raised by other servants, and he died about midway through the war. The war between the Phoenixes and the Elves, and that is a completely other story. This video is already long enough, and I am so not explaining the war between the Elves and the Phoenixes in this video, or it will be an hour long. But, yeah, so when Aidion is called the son of Redmond, he is reminded of two shameful moments in his family's history. One that almost destroyed his people, and the other that did destroy his family. And he does not like being reminded that the only reason people know his name is because of his father and his ancestor. Especially because the things that made them memorable are not good things. So, next time you read my book, assuming you do, and you go, why on earth is he getting so mad just because they called him by his proper title? Maybe you'll understand a little bit better and you can laugh at all the other people who are confused. Have a nice day.